All right, brothers, we are now recording. Again, we welcome you back to our educational series. Today, we're going to do the Knights of the Red Cross as we are getting into our Knights Templar section. We have, again, for recap, we have gone through the Royal Arch, Royal and Select, and now the Knights Templar section. These videos can be found on YouTube. You can look under my name, Raul Randall, and they'll come up. San Diego York Right podcast. The whole series is there. Every video will be posted there. But today you got a treat, so I'm gonna chill out for a second here. I'm gonna introduce the Sir Knight that'll bring the word today, and it is my brother, my co-author of all of these books and more to come. Sir Knight Charles Smith. Sir, the floor is yours.
I appreciate you. Appreciate you. Also, it's just a beautiful thing to see a lot of the brothers from California that I've not seen in a very, very long time. I'm out here in Chicago, back living out here again. Just finished my second term of Worshipful Master. I'm now a past master. And for anybody that's been a past master or a worshipful master, you know you ran out that chair as fast as you could. And that was exactly what I did at the end. So it's been good. Putting some more time and dedication and effort into to learning the craft a little bit more out here. So today's lecture is on the Red Cross. Because this is going to be seen, YouTube, everything else, I left a lot of things out of it masonically, just because we're not sharing stuff that we shouldn't be sharing. The other thing too, to preface what's going on in this lecture is, has anybody in here done like numerology? Like went down that rabbit hole of numerology? Okay. Well, when I was going into the research and everything, I started realizing like you can go down a rabbit hole of the list of the kings of Babylon and Persia and everything else, and it could take you into 15 different directions. And so that's kind of where the lecture and everything is going to go to today, is following me down that rabbit hole that I have. Can everybody see the screen? Get a thumbs up. Cool. All right, so The Red Cross by Sir Knight Charles Smith. I am still out of one of the best commanderies on the planet, Charles T. Garrett, number 17, out of California. Appreciate y'all. All right, so what we're gonna see here is, I gotta move this. I'm gonna kind of just put that screen down. So if you guys are seeing something, just say it out loud so I can see you, because otherwise I'm not gonna see you.
You're good. We just see timeline and points of note.
Okay, cool. So I'm gonna put you guys in the corner there. All right. So the source of this, graphic, and it's just a section of the graphic, is in the link below. I'll send this entire PowerPoint deck to Sir Knight Raul Randall. But I wanted to get some important points of note, and I wanted to start back with the building of the first temple and what it means for us as Masons, and then from there move forward. So Solomon's Temple begins construction in 1968 BC. Solomon's Temple is completed in 1959 BC. And then again, the reason why I'm bringing this up is the importance of, as Masons, we are taught of the speculative version. So it's building our first temple, who we are, what we're trying to do. When we continue on in Masonry, once we become raised as Masons, we go through our death and then get brought back to life. And then we go through the Holy Royal Arch and we start to realize that we're still missing things. And we continue this path of Hiram Abiff and learning him as the main character. And then once we enter the Black House, the Knights Templar's house, he starts to realize that he is no longer the main character, that somebody else is taking its place. And so it's the destruction of the temple, the first temple, destruction of who we are as individuals, moving forward into now. So Solomon's temple was destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar II in 586 BC. And that becomes a pretty dark period. And you'll see on here, over in the top right-hand corner, the destruction of Solomon's temple by Nebuchadnezzar, 586 BC. And then it goes into the Jews are exiled. They are no longer allowed in the lands that they're in, which sounds very, very, very familiar to what's going on in the world today. And a lot of the conversations today is going to be relevant to what's happening in the world that we have going on. So then we go into the second half of the map here, and it's really focusing on the Babylonian exile and what happened from there until the next king took over, and was able to kind of bring the Jews back to where they needed to be. So King Cyrus was the king that came back and basically took over again, ended the exile, and then allowed the Jews and even told the Jews, "Hey, go back and build your second temple. We want you to go back. I'm a big believer in God. We need you to go back there and do that. You're free to go." And he had two sons, Cambyses the second, and then Bardia. Now, those two names are very, very important because King Cyrus later on dies. So then Cambyses becomes the next heir to the throne. And he's ruling it, but it's a short period of time that he's ruling it. He was the older of the two brothers. And he kind of did some shady stuff because he was jealous. And he goes back to other biblical stories of brothers being jealous of their brothers and kind of taking birthrights and everything else. But he was jealous of his brother and was kind of worried about him, freaking out about him. And so his brother Bardia didn't wasn't really aware of this jealousy. And Cambyses also had a very, very good understanding of, let's kind of keep this breast to breast with my people and not know about anything. And all of a sudden, Cambyses the second dies. And then people are like in the air, like, what's going on? Who is the next heir to the throne? Because he had two kids. King Cyrus had two kids. Cambyses the second did not have any children at all. So the heir then passes down to his younger brother, Bardia. But nobody really knew who Bardia was, at least in the area that they were working in. They couldn't remember what he looked like, who his name was. Some people thought he was him. Some people thought they weren't. So a usurper came into the mix and basically took over and stated that he was Bardia. And the rightful heir to the throne is him because that's who he is. And I kind of jumped ahead, but Cambyses 2 goes to fight the usurper, but dies mysteriously. In other research, it shows that he had gangrene and he could have died from the infection. But there's research that says that he possibly died from an infection, and some people say that he possibly just died mysteriously. They don't really have a definite definition. The same way they don't have a definite definition around who Bardia was after Cambyses. There's basically people just don't know who he is or if he was truly there. So before dying, Cambyses reveals something very, very important to his most trusted allies and then also to the kingdom. And he said, just giving you guys a heads up, I did lie. I had my brother murdered. I told everybody in here that he was alive and that he was going somewhere else or he might have passed away, but I actually had him murdered. So the person that's trying to rule right now is not my brother. He does not have a right to this throne. And then later on, they find out, oh, this isn't the dude. And you guys know about Caesar and E2 Brute. So there were 7 nobles in that period that realized, oh, Cambyses just told us that this guy that's masquerading as my brother is not my brother, that he's a fraud. I had my brother murdered. So then they're like, oh, okay, you had that. 7 nobles get together, they plan an attack, and very similar to the story of Caesar, stab him in the back, literally, and kill him. Kill this person, which was the usurper, masquerading as Bardia. And that happened in 522 BC, in which one of those 7 nobles was Darius the Great, and he was a Persian ruler. Now, here's the difference. He was a Persian ruler at the time. He wasn't technically the Babylonian ruler at the time, because you had Bardia during this time in 522. They were still battling to figure that out. Bardia was over Babylon. Darius was over Persia. And then Nebuchadnezzar was over Babylon when Nebuchadnezzar III was the king of Babylon, while Darius the Great was also the ruler of Persia. So a little difference there. But what happened in the Darius and Nebuchadnezzar III is Nebuchadnezzar wanted to basically fight for the rule of all Persia, including Babylon. And Darius is like, no, it's not going to happen. We're going to come over and we're going to attack you. And for a long time, they couldn't figure out how to get across the river because you couldn't bring a whole army across. So what Darius the Great did was like, you know what? Let's inflate animal bladders and leather packs and attach them to the camels and everything that they needed to and float everything across. And that's what they did. They floated everything across the river to then take on Nebuchadnezzar III and defeated him. And when they defeated him, they Nebuchadnezzar was actually running back to Babylon, where Darius the Great and everybody else continued to pursue him, and found Darius, took siege to the city, destroyed everything, and killed Nebuchadnezzar III. But Darius the Great was also somebody that was looking to expand, and trying to go to different countries and lands at the time and take siege. He really enjoyed it because he wanted to just develop and develop and develop. And so he left Babylon shortly after taking it from Nebuchadnezzar III and decided to continue to go east. And he kept going east and fighting and fighting and fighting. And then there was an uproar again. And after the uproar, and again, this is during Darius the Great's first reign, during the uproar, there was another person that decided to say, hey, I'm really the next heir to this, and we need to rebel against Darius the Great. He's not even here anymore. He's out there taking siege, but he's not looking after us. Let's, I'm going to take over because I'm technically one of the heirs of the last independent great king, and I'll bring those names up later on. And then he named himself Nebuchadnezzar IV. Kind of backtracking, Nebuchadnezzar III, that wasn't his real name. He also stated that he was one of the sons of the last independent great kings, and I'll bring that name up later on. And then later on, he named himself, after he became quote unquote ruler, he named himself Nebuchadnezzar. So then it goes, Darius the Great is still fighting where he needs to go fight. And then Nebuchadnezzar IV comes in, and he wants to take rule and he wants to take reign. And his reign was very, very short-lived. And Darius came back and said, you know what are you doing here? This is my land. This is my people. Laid siege, killed him. All of this is going to add up in a moment. And Darius the Great comes back, and he has a second reign in 521 BC. And remember, for all those out there, BC, everything counts backwards. So if it looks like, wait, why is it 522? It always counts backwards. Okay, so before we go into this next part, the reason why I wanted to figure out the whole thing around Darius the Great is because of the challenge that he has, that is one of the main story points behind the Red Cross, is this challenge, and Zerubbabel being the champion of wisdom and being able to understand, well, there's actually two elements to this that's going to help everybody move forward. But in order for me to understand why Darius would choose his answer to be correct, I needed to understand more about Darius. And that's the rabbit hole I was telling you about, that I was going down this rabbit hole of who is Darius and who were the kings before and how did that play into his life. And King Darius's first reign to his second reign, he switched. He made a switch in his head that I don't need to keep going after things because things aren't bringing me joy. I need to stay true to my people and help others around me. I don't need to keep expanding. I could keep everything simple. So that night where his 3 guards, in one story it's 3 guards, and another story it's 3 advisors, and another story it's 3 nobles. So there's 3 people involved in this. One of those people being Zerubbabel, where they have a whole conversation, and in one story they say they write things on a piece of paper and they slide it under King Darius's pillow, and then others say that Darius was included in the conversation, and so they had a conversation around well, you guys decide which one do you think is the strongest or the wisest or whatever it is. So there's different interpretations out there depending on which sources that you go through. And the first uh, person, I'm just going to say person, involved in the three, decided to say that. So the choices were wine, the king, or women. Those were the three choices that people were talking about. And the first person said, no, it's wine. Wine is the strongest of all because wine can rule a man's thoughts. A wine can make people forget about things. A wine can is used to celebrate. It's also used to mourn, and it's used to take over the world that we're in. And King Darius listens to it. Okay, he's got some points here. Basically, wine can control individuals, especially if in excess. Okay. And then the next one says, no, it's the king. The king is the strongest because the king has rule over all. The king can tell people what to do, and when to do it. The king can rule armies that can expand across the world and take on, lay siege to others. So the king has to be the strongest of all because without the king, you don't have a kingdom, you don't have the people to follow. And King Darius, obviously, yeah, I did those things. I laid waste to other lands, and I was able to take control of other places, and I've lost Babylon once and I got it back. It's King sounds good. That makes sense. And then Zerubbabel says, no, it's I believe it's women, and the reason why he believed that it was women is because men leave their lands, they leave their family to go start anew with a woman. A woman is able to provide things to a man that wine and a king cannot, and they can give birth to their heirs. But you know what? A woman is it's not just a woman alone because that can also be used to control you as an individual. That a woman can hold things back from you, or they can manipulate you in ways to make sure that you're not getting what you want, or you're only doing things that they need you to do. So there has to be another point to this, and the other point is women and truth. And the truth is the understanding of who we are as individuals. The truth is being true to yourself and owning up when you make mistakes. The truth is realizing that it's okay to be a human being. It's okay to be, heard. It's okay to need help. The truth is the truth. And a lot of times we think about if you have two people having conversations and one person says, well, this person called me whatever, and this one's like, I never said that. A lot of us will always say, well, there's always three stories to a truth. There's or person A, person B, and then the actual truth. And if we're not there, we can't know. And so King Darius is like, oh, absolutely, that makes sense. The truth is the strongest because if you have the truth and you're equipped with the truth, you can make sure that you don't fall into the what do I say? You don't fall into the vice of a king having all the power and being power hungry. You don't fall into the vice of excessive use of alcohol or wine to lose control of your thoughts and your actions. And you don't um, fall into the vice of lust and only utilizing women for one thing. So then why do you think he chose truth? And again, let's go back into who Darius was, who King Darius was, and how he became who he was. Now, in our rituals, there's things in there, and I'm not going to go into it again, but in the Knights Templar ritual, it gives you a story about Darius uh, and Zerubbabel and how they met originally and how they became friends. So there is a connection between Zerubbabel and Darius in the beginning. However, let's go back further to Darius and realize as a king, what was he doing? Was he going for truth in his first reign, or was he just going for spoils and for vices? So we think back to his life. So King Cyrus had two sons, Cambyses the second and Bardia. But wait, was Bardia alive at the end? We now know, because I said in the lecture already, that Cambyses had his brother murdered. So this usurper that pretended to be somebody that he wasn't ended up being king. Now, did that prove well to that usurper for being a lie and not living in the truth? No, he destroyed himself and he was murdered and he was killed. Okay, so for the king, he was a king. The usurper was a king. So he can't be the strongest if the truth killed him. Nebuchadnezzar III, king of Babylon, 522 BC. Was he truly a descendant? So he took the name of Nebuchadnezzar because he preached that he was the descendant of Nabonidus, which was the last independent king of Babylon. But here's the thing about Nabonidus. Nobody knows. And in all the research that I've done, and if somebody knows more about it, please jump in when we get to the Q&A. But they can't really track down all of his heirs. So there was no proof that this person who was claiming to be an heir of Nabonidus, the true last independent king of Babylon, was who he was saying he was. So again, another person says, I am this person, but they're not telling the truth. Darius came back in, murdered him, done. So obviously the truth is still winning. Darius leaves. He goes, lays waste, takes siege, trying to get more land. He's not searching for the truth. All of a sudden, what happens? He loses his kingdom again. So he's still a king, but he's losing his kingdom because he's searching for things that has nothing to do with him. He comes back, Nebuchadnezzar IV, king of Babylon, 521, short-term reign. But guess what? He also preached that he was the descendant of Nabonidus, the last independent king of Babylon. And people were picking up on it. Okay, he was the heir. Well, wait, this other guy said he was the heir, and he called himself Nebuchadnezzar, and this guy said he's the heir. Now he's calling himself Nebuchadnezzar. Darius comes back, kills him. So it's definitely not the king or the wine or the women alone. You have to have truth. And he's realizing this over and over in his life, that without truth, there isn't anything else there. So what about now then? I like to bring all my lectures to the point of we have what happened back then, because these are all stories for us to build ourselves and build our own second temple, to be able to be a better person for ourselves. And as an adult, I'm realizing more and more that, we're all fallible. We all make mistakes and we all have places to learn and to grow. So if the story back then for Darius and Zerubbabel and the other two was which one was strongest, well, what about now? What are we facing in today's world? So in today's world, it's not just alcohol. It's not just wine. You have multiple drugs, multiple vices, all hitting you at the same time. They all do the same exact thing, and they all are able to have the same control over us, the same way the first person said, oh, well, wine has to be the strongest because it can make you forget things and it can control you. So it has to be the strongest. Well, it wasn't just wine it was the abuse of it. And there's so much of that in our society today. I put this one up here because in the world that we live in now, the richest of the rich are now the kings, and money and power are ruling everything. Now, are they the most powerful people on the planet? No. Because without truth, that too can come crumbling down. And then women. The women is still the same. Are we abusing our lust? Are we abusing our love for them and not truly seeing what we need to see? So the question to yourselves is, with the new things in our lives, what's our new truth? What can we do differently? Part of this goes into the social media world that we live in. And I follow Gary Vee on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook, and listen to a lot of his podcasts and everything. And that's because I'm an entrepreneur, branching out, doing my own businesses. So I'm always learning how to interact with social media in different ways. And when I was out there in California, I was working for an educational company where we were putting out content to everybody. And we were doing A/B testing. If you don't know what A/B testing is, it's a marketing strategy where you put the same exact pictures up or the same exact ad up, but you change two things you change one thing in the B that is different from the A. And then you put both of them out with the same amount of money to the same exact audience, and you figure out which one does better. And that's how we used to have to get information out to people. Well, I'm thinking about that is Darius gave Zerubbabel power again and reinvested him with what he was divested because he spoke about truth. So in order to understand today's world, we need to understand what media is around us. And so we have social media that most of us know about. This is social media. We have Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, X, Blue Sky, all these different things, Twitch, all that good stuff. But the thing with social media, I want to say 5, 10 years ago, is it was based off of the algorithms were based off of the content that you saw on your Facebook page or your Instagram feed, um, was based off of the people that you were following or the people that were following you. So you were only able to see information of the people that you specifically knew. So it was very hard to grow your audience because you had to get more people to follow you in order for them to see what you're posting. And in the same exact way, you're only seeing things that you want to see. So if you're like, hey, I want to look at ABC or Fox or CNN or NPR, whatever it is, and you follow those, that's the information that you're choosing to see. But then will also see content that others are posting that you're following. So even if we have, and this is the only time I'm going to get political on this, without being political. If you are a Democrat, but you have Republican friends on your social media, you would still see both. In what social media was. So you will be able to have the ability to see content you may not want to see. If you're extremist on either side, you're not going to want to see either side, but you still are seeing it on your page because the only thing you have to do now is click, no, I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it. But that's still a social media platform. So in the social media platform, you're getting thousands of viewpoints. You're not just getting the viewpoint that you want to see, you're getting thousands of it. So Gary Vee recently said, you know what, I think where social media is going is I think social media is dead. Not the apps and not the platforms. Those are still active. But it's how the algorithms are now focused that it's no longer social media, it's interest media. And with that, I had a conversation with my uncle and my dad when we were in Pittsburgh, and it was around the politics of everything. And they're like, "Well, I can't understand why this person would vote for such and such, and I can't understand why this person would vote for such and such." And I broke it down to him and I said, "Well, they're not seeing the same things. We're not seeing the same information anymore. If all we're doing is following one person, or we're only viewing 30 seconds of this TikTok on Democrats, or we're only viewing 30 seconds of TikTok on Republicans, the interest media, not social media, but the interest media of TikTok, of Instagram, of Facebook, of Twitch, all of that is going to start showing you more of those things that you are watching more. So the content equals the most viewed, most watched sections. The difference is before on social media, the content was based off of the followers that you were following. Now it's based off of what you are watching, and the algorithm is pushing more of that stuff towards you. So there are people on this planet that have never seen anything that, let's just say, the Republicans were posting and pushing out, or they've never seen anything that the Democrats were pushing and posting out. They've never seen those ads before. When I left from here to go to Philadelphia for one of our brother's funerals, for his wife's funeral, and it was right before the election. So I'm in Philadelphia. I'm in Chicago now, but I'm flying to Philadelphia, which at that point was, hey, Pennsylvania is a huge, huge swing state. The amount of ads I saw there and the content of ads I saw there were completely different than the ads that I saw here. Completely different. It was like I was living in a completely different world. And so they're pushing things to us that are their truths and their understandings, which a lot of us would probably never see. In interest media, the algorithms that are created now, we're mainly seeing content that we enjoy. And it's real simple to just swipe up and say, I don't want to watch this anymore. And then if you start watching something longer and longer and longer, you're like, oh, I kind of like this. The algorithm was already like, cool, interest media, I'm putting more of that into him. I'm going to put more of this content that he's enjoying into him, because the longer he stays on this app, the more money I make from ads. The longer I stay in this app and I can keep control of people's minds, the more people that have money that want to push their product is going to pay into this company and into this app. So it's interest media now versus social media. And here's the very, very dangerous part, is it has a limited viewpoint. We're only seeing what we want to see and what we enjoy, versus seeing both sides of an argument. We always see this: seek and you shall find, knock and the door will open, ask and you shall receive. But I'm adding something else to this: research and you will learn. With the Red Cross, it's about learning truth. The world that we live in currently, if we only view what we want to view, we are not standing to our obligation of truth, because we're only researching what we want to research through the platforms that we want to view, through the media outlets that we need to see, that we want to see. We turn off Fox, or we turn off CNN, or we choose to purposely not see these things anymore. So we never hear the other side. So the truth is out there. We need to search for it. And that's us as a whole. The sources here, we have the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand, Commander of California, Sir Knight Ritual, and that's mine's was issued from Charles T. Garrett, number 17. I also use the Apocrypha, because it gives you the story of the challenge that we spoke about. I used, this is a really good book too. It gives you a timeline. It's the Rose Chronicle Guide to the Bible, and inside of it is really cool. It gives you a chronological map in multiple areas where you can kind of check out what was going on in that area. I use Wikipedia a lot because I'm seeing quick information that kind of gives me a little bit more to it. So the list of the kings for those images you saw on the slides, I use Google Images. And then I don't have, give me 1 second. I have it here. So I also use day trading, attention, how to actually build brands and sales with New Social Media World. With Gary Vee, explains how we're getting the truth that we're getting, or the lack of truth that we're going. And so ends my lecture, and I will open it up to Q&A.
I appreciate you, man. Again, brothers, what you just heard was a really in-depth synopsis on the Red Cross degree, because it's about truth, women, and wine. And as we think about that, we're in a world right now where we run from the truth. So again, it's just the Q&A portion, as we normally do. Please feel free to ask Sir Knight Smith questions.
Hey, Dr. Randall, I don't really have a question, but I just want to commend presenting information that's relevant to real world and actual application, as well as, as Masons, we are encouraged to continually search. We talk about search for the light, but and search for the word, but that being truth, right? And in this constant change of and like you, not trying to make it, not weaponize it politically. However, some of the changes to what we would call free speech or speech in general, and how information is being manipulated in a sense, right? And now where some roadblocks and some governance was in place to uphold truth, correct? With fact checking, those are the purposes, quote unquote, fact checking to uphold truth was being changed. It encourages and really is expedient that we get back to the search for truth, and even just from the basic Masonic principles. So I just commend you on providing that information in relating it to our Red Cross degree, where we can definitely not only just use. I mean, as a minister of the gospel, I'm always encouraging people to read it for yourself, search it for yourself, research it yourself. And that's what we need to do with all information. I was talking with somebody, and I shared how we've just become ignorant of governmental processes and the Constitution, because it's not necessarily emphasized in schools. They don't teach civics anymore, right? And that information is relevant now because many in our leadership, congressional and Senate leadership, don't have the background that helps them to be efficient, in my opinion. Some are not educated in the or have experience in what we would call politics, and they create their own truths because they don't, whether by research or education. So that's all. Just wanted to commend you and Dr. Raoul, Dr. Randall on presenting this information.
I
Yeah,
appreciate
that was brother Sir Knight Smith. But again, it was a great tie-in at the end. If you notice, today's social media is our truth, and whether we like it or not, like that is a vice for some of us. And so again, just think about these things. I don't think I know today was a deep interpretation and a reflection of the Knights of the Red Cross degree. And then one thing to add, as I continue with the questions, is that you, again, as I stated earlier today, when you come into this degree, you're addressed as a fellow craft. So again, the universality and the cryptic nature of masonry continues on and on and on in this effervescence. So continuing with the questions, please, brothers, unmute yourselves and ask Sir Knight Smith's questions.
So not really a question, but just a comment that, great presentation. The tie-in was key, very key. One of the things that stood out to me that the Reverend Doctor that spoke before you was making key that a lot of our politicians and things like that and governance does not have a clue about a lot of this or how it ties in. But what's the funny thing I just want to leave with everybody is we make them on-site masons and all this stuff and get them involved in all these different houses, and they still continue to do that. So in order to conserve the order, I feel, this is my personal opinion, not it's no reflection on any organization that I'm in or anything, but we should consider that from a membership standpoint if we're going to improve the membership to keep this legacy going forward. And that's all I got for you. Keith Spates from the jurisdiction of Maryland.
I appreciate that fully.
Yeah. Again, met those brothers, met Keith and all those guys when we went to Baltimore in November, going to Texas this week, and just trying to spread, pun intended, the truth. The podcast is intended to spread the truth. There's no refuting biblical occurrences. And this is why every lecture you get to see the biblical references. And I just want to point that out specifically, that it's not made up. These are not our words and not our thoughts and not our interpretations. These are what the Most High intended it for us to hear and see. And over 2,000 years ago, the truth is still relevant today. So continuing with the questions.
I'll jump in. Congratulations,
go ahead.
Smith. Yeah, congratulations, Companion Smith. The question always pops up: what come you here to do? We're here to learn. That's the first thing, to learn. With regards to the Red Cross degree, it's early familiar with the 16th degree in Scottish Rite Mason, which also mentions that those three same issues: wine, women, and power. Those same correlations go on today with politics, religion, social interactions with one another, wine, women, and power. If you can subdue those passions, you will improve yourself as a Mason and a man. It all ties in. The thing is, these reoccurring allegories are stories to remind us today of the errors in our ways and the pathway to improve ourselves. Each degree is supposed to teach us specific lessons to achieve that quote unquote perfection. It's an action. You have to have action into this. You can't just read and like, oh, that's a beautiful story.
Mhm.
Saw someone put a comment there about reading the Bible. Well, those may not have time to read the Bible. There's an audio version which you can listen to at the push of a button. The Bible is a beautiful story if you understand and interpret the analogies in there, the stories in it. Those stories were written for those times, but those same stories still apply to us today. Congratulations for making those connections, especially with social media, because we have to, like I said, once you learn something, you can always learn more stuff. You don't just relegate yourself to that chamber of this is it, I'm done. That's not what masonry is supposed to be about. And thank you for making that point. Oh yeah, also those that are struggling with their membership, refer members back to that second landmark and hold them to it. We all are obligated ourselves to that landmark. It's an action item. We have to carry through with our obligations.
Yeah.
We're not doing that.
I got you, brother. I got you, brother Faircloth. I'll go to brother Orlando first. Before we get to Orlando, just a tidbit too that he talked about learning to do our passion and improve ourselves in masonry. But what as we ascend in masonry and improve ourselves in masonry, we forget the first lesson in masonry. That's humility. Go ahead, brother O.
Wow. Sir Knight Smith, man, excellent presentation. I'm definitely glad that you included the Apocrypha in there, because a lot of people don't realize that I believe the Council of Nicaea had separated that part from the Bible. So in other words, they took a lot of the truth out.
Mhm.
And a lot of the history you really can't connect. Sometimes it's hard for people, at least for me, I'll speak for myself. It was hard for me to connect the old and the new when you're missing that middle piece. Because in that middle piece, you got first and second egg, just like you referred to. You got Bel and the Red Dragon. You got the prayer of Manasseh. You have the rest of Esther. So there's a lot of history in that Apocrypha book that is completely candid according to the Bible. That's number one. I mean, you even got stuff related to the Maccabees in there. I don't know if anybody's read anything about the Maccabees, but if you read the history, some good stuff going on in there, man. So I would definitely encourage all you brothers, if you don't have an Apocrypha, it's always good to get one and just to expound your knowledge on that. And one thing, what the brother said, Brother Burley Fields, man, about action. I tell that to my candidates all the time. Application, application, application. People want to have faith, but not action behind the faith. So guess what? You have no faith. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't pray for something and not work towards whatever you're praying for, because that really doesn't give a chance for God to move. You got to make sure you put in action steps behind your prayers so that he can do what he was going to do, or he is going to do, and follow his word as well. You know what I'm saying? But I always tell you, and you never get wisdom without application on anything. So if you're looking for that wisdom, it takes action to seek out that wisdom, because you're going to get it, because you're going to get the wisdom through your experience, but that experience doesn't come without the application. So again, Sir Knight, excellent presentation, bro. That's all I have.
We get some church today. Faith without works is dead. Go ahead, brother Faircloth.
I'll tell you, wisdom and knowledge, knowledge and wisdom, two separate things, but both very powerful. Thank you, Companion Smith. We was just talking here about vices and superfluities. And when you consider these two things, we have to ensure that one of the brothers was just talking about, we bring these people in and they don't learn. It's funny because my class that I'm teaching right now, I'm talking about devices and superfluities of life and how it affects you. And it goes back to, if you will, the stories from the Bible, particularly 2 Kings. And so when you start talking about rough ashlar, perfect ashlar, how are you chipping away? How are you using your tools? And it's funny how you brought all of this together, to show how we all still have our vices and superfluities, but yet from the time that you was talking about, those three, to now, these three, still vices and superfluities. So, when we as Masons start to understand more so about what we are reading, what our vows, what our obligations mean, and understand those words, then we all can become so much better. And in not just making ourselves better, but bringing our brothers along to understand what can make them better. So great presentation. Continue doing what you're doing. That's all I had to say.
Appreciate you, bro.
Appreciate you.
Go ahead, Dr. Kimbrough.
Hey, one thing, and I as always, man, respectful of every brother that's a part. As we talk about sharing truth, as the brother or the Sir Knight mentioned about the Council of Nicene, I think one of the things that I just like to share is just as a moment of sharing information. One of the things when you read the Holy Bible is a salvinic story, but it's not to give any value from the other books that were not there because it is a historical recollection. However, not connected from the Salvinic story. At least it was determined that it wasn't connected to the Salvinic story that you find in the 66 books that are there. But as we all know, there is a lot of history that's not listed in those books that we read, especially during, from Malachi to Matthew, all of a sudden the Romans are in charge, right? So, how did it get there? And then that period of darkness, as they call, because there was no prophets, there was no word from God in that time period. We recognize that there was stuff going on. That's the time when Alexander the Great was in rule. That's the time when, as you talk about the Maccabees and many of the historical aspects that's listed in the Apocrypha. So I always like to share that information because a lot of times we are presented the missing books, if you would, which I consider the books, just not a part of that, as a plot or we're presented it in a way. And I'm not saying that, brother, that Sir Knight presented it in that way, but from a world perspective, as we talk about truth and seeking truth, I just like to add this to a point of reference for more research for you and understanding why we have the books that we have in the Holy Bible in relation to no conspiracy or attempt in a sense to leave information out. I too have read, I've studied all, I've read the Apocrypha for the historical standpoint, very familiar with the book of Maccabees and every book that's listed in there. Even to the point King Darius and King Cyrus, their story is listed as well in Ezra. So I'd encourage you also to, get more background as what Companion Smith presented as well, that may give you a full picture as well. So I just wanted to share a little piece of truth that's associated for your research. Don't just believe me, research it for yourself, right? Thank you, Doctor.
No problem. Tino, I'll get to you in a second. The brothers that are on here that are not in the Knights Templar, this is just a visual depiction of the truth, pun intended again, and what Knights Templar story brings to Masonry as a whole. So don't undervalue your ascent into being a Knights Templar. And again, I shamelessly say that all these brothers, at least most of these brothers, have been talking from Charles T. Garrett. Go ahead, Tino.
Okay, I have two topics to cover. One of them was the numerology, which ties into genealogy, because everybody has a lineage, and the only one that didn't have a lineage, according to the Bible, was Melchizedek. I think I'm saying this right now.
Another day.
Yeah. So I think we're all tracking with that. I just want to throw that out there just in case anybody didn't realize that a high priest, he's considered forever a high priest because of that. And you can research that yourself as well. The other thing I had to put in there is there's my thought on the reason why they took the books out of the Bible the way they did, is considered being cannibalized in a sense, was because the African word for that is called apartheid. Uh, And that's what we need to make sure that we're making sure that we're not falling into that hole again. We got, those who don't uh, know history are doomed to repeat it. So that's all I really have to say.
I appreciate you, sir. And I just like everybody to know that is actually one of our district deputies for the Pacific Prince Hall Grand Commander. So thank you for your input. We got time for a couple more. Again, we want to be very respectful of everybody's time, but I think we're doing good on time. So we'll take a couple more questions and or comments. I know that I think there was one or two hands that were up. So please go ahead. Charles,
I just had
I was about to say they were so overwhelmed with the information, they don't have nothing to say.
No, I was gonna
I
say,
said-
one thing that I really did mention is going back to that first thing we learned when we joined Masonry was humility, man.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I did notice about the great kings in the Bible, they all moved on counsel. They never made their own decisions like that. Well, they made their own decisions, but I've noticed they all had their group of counselors that they would go to and seek counsel. So that's one thing that I noticed too, which also showed those kings that had humility and those kings that didn't have humility, or they took the counsel and didn't follow it. So that's one thing I wanted to point out too.
Sir, go ahead, B.
like one of those things. He controls the printed page, controls the information of the age.
Mm,
That's what it worked. That's what it was back then. You control the flow of information. You won.
mm. Yeah, we definitely don't want to fall into a Squid Game type of situation. You know what I mean? So understanding your truth, and like Dr. Kimbrough was saying, it's research it for yourself, but understand, research it nonetheless. Study to show thyself worthy. And you know, we get this lesson biblically over and over and over again, and subconsciously, consciously and subconsciously. And as we do, by the grace of God, as we have this platform to do it, we're going to continue to put this truth and this message out over and over and over again until it becomes this content becomes such an algorithm that it will manifest itself in a big way, and brothers will learn what masonry really is. As we discussed, especially at the official visit last Saturday, we discussed somewhat on these lines. So appreciate you, B. Got time for one or two more.
Yeah, I'm gonna add one thing real quick too. So in everything that I do, I'm actively thinking about what it looks like on the outside. And part of it is like the reason why I discussed how I'm not going to get political into the things that we do. And the reason why I don't, and I try my damnedest not to, even though I strongly feel the way that I feel, is the way that we have been desensitized to filtering is based off of, oh, if this person's a Democrat, I'm not listening to him anymore. If this person's a Republican, I'm not listening to him anymore. If this person's an independent, I'm not listening to him anymore. And I'm not saying the people on the call are, but we all have our internal biases, our unconscious biases. So we're putting our information out there to the world, realize that we are, in a way, filtering out the people that we're getting truth to, that we're getting our true understandings of. I feel that it's a blessing that I've been a Prince Hall Mason since the inception of me being a Mason, and being able to be invited into a culture that's not mine, and being able to thrive in a culture that's not mine, and really just be here, um, and go travel and see things, because I see things that my white counterparts don't, that will never see, that their lived experiences are completely different than my lived experiences. I grew up this way. This is like, I felt way more comfortable around people of color than people of my own color. So this is who I was and this is what I do. But it took me a long time to realize, like, why is my white counterpart saying these things? Well, they didn't live the same thing. And so I say all that to put that out there of when we are as educators, because everybody on here is an educator because you're here, you're learning. Be mindful of how we are portraying ourselves. I'm not saying don't fight for what you believe in, not at all. We're not being Hamilton, Mr. Burr. Like we're still being who we are. But remember that the world that we live in right now is so jaded. that the second we announce something and say that I'm a Democrat or I'm a Republican, people will instantly say, I'm not listening to you anymore. Doesn't matter if what you're telling me is the truth. I can't hear you anymore. So I'm just putting that out there. That's why I was specifically purposeful on that. And the other reason too is your vote is your choice, period. And back in the day, World War II, a lot of people would have fought people if they asked them who they voted for. So that's another reason I put that out there.
Appreciate you, bro.
Yep.
All right, brothers, if we wrap it up, is there anything that anybody else would like to put out? Just, because again, it was a lot of great information put out today, and I really hope that you guys mentally digested it. But again, it'll be up on YouTube, so you can go back and really, because I don't want this to go over people's heads, and I don't say that in a bad way. I just say that there was a lot of information that you got to maybe watch a second time to really glean from. But then do this, take this call to action, right? Just like brother was talking about. Talk is cheap, action costs. Take these back to your subordinate commanderies, to your councils, to your chapters, to your lodges, and this information is effervescent across that landscape. Take it back and ask the question. And I always ask brothers, just walk up to a brother and ask him, what's your why? And then from that point, spur a conversation and then get into the dialogue of truth. And we talk about membership dying, just like we had that conversation earlier, but membership's dying because we're not talking. It's not that we're not teaching, we're just not talking. We're not having conversations with brothers. Just meeting brothers at their level. And that sounds so cliche, but just think about a brother that's so high ascended in masonry, but they can come down and have a normal conversation with a brother that just joined 5 minutes ago. And yeah, we're all on a level, but as Damian Jack said when we interviewed him last week, we're all on different levels. We get that, but come down to his level and have a conversation with him. We just don't talk, brothers. That's why our membership is dying. Just talk. And remember that first lesson in masonry. You gave up your left shoe for a reason. It was humility. Right? Not humiliation. It was humility. So any other brother have anything before we proceed to close, as they say?
What? I missed it.
You're good, sir. We can hear you. Unless you're doing that unintentionally.
I think he missed it.
Okay. All right, brothers. Who?
Clark, we have the YouTube. He'll put it out there and send you that.
Yeah, by no later than tomorrow, this will be up on YouTube. Again, if you go on YouTube and you search San Diego Yorkright, it'll come up. So give me till tomorrow, about this time tomorrow, if not before. San Diego Yorkright, it'll come up. Or you could just search Raul Randall either way, and it'll come up. But it's all linked back to San Diego Yorkright. And there's a lot of good feedback from some heavies actually in the chat. The great jobs and no, really great job, great presentation. Dr. Robinson put a great job, Charles. Again, we appreciate all you guys, man. We love and respect all you guys for what you're doing and what we can do. And for some of you, I'll see you in Texas. For others, we'll see you next month. And Godspeed to all you guys.